Meghalaya's green deposit scheme. On the surface, it seems like a brilliant idea. Tourists pay a deposit, they don't litter, and the beautiful scenery stays beautiful. But what if the whole thing is just for show? Let's dig in and figure out if this is a real solution or just a bit of clever green tokenism.
You know, this one question really hits the nail on the head. It forces us to ask, are we building something that just looks good, but is actually hollow on the inside? Does this system actually work where it counts?
All right, so let's start with the official story. On paper, the idea is super simple, and you've got to admit, it sounds pretty great. So back in late 2025, the government rolled this out with a really admirable goal: protect its most stunning and most fragile natural spots from a flood of plastic waste. It's the kind of headline you love to see, and a policy that, at first glance, makes total sense.
Here's how it's supposed to work for you, the tourist. It's incredibly straightforward. You show up with plastic bottles or wrappers, you pay a 100 rupee deposit. The idea is that this makes you hang on to your trash. Then, when you leave, you drop it all off at a special collection point, and you get your 100 rupees back. Simple, foolproof, right?
And look, the intention here is solid. The whole point is to change our behavior, make us a bit more responsible, and keep these incredible landscapes clean. It's a noble cause for sure. But is that really the whole story? Because that's where things get interesting. The moment you start to pull at that one little thread, some pretty big questions start to unravel.
And here it is. This is the question that changes everything. So you've done your part, you've collected your trash, you've gotten your money back. So what happens to that bag of plastic now? Where does it actually end up?
Well, to answer that, we've got to look at the data. And this, right here, is where that beautiful, simple idea crashes into a very harsh reality.
Just look at this number, 98%. A 2024 report from the Comptroller and Auditor General found that 98% of all municipal waste in Meghalaya is dumped without any kind of treatment. Let that sink in for a second. 98%. You see that tiny, tiny sliver on the left? That's the 2% of waste that actually gets processed. The giant mountain on the right? That's everything else. So all that plastic that tourists are so carefully collecting, it's just being funneled right back into a system that is completely and totally broken.
And this exposes three, fatal flaws. First, as we just saw, there's no infrastructure. Proper disposal just means it's going to the same old untreated landfill. Second, think about enforcement. How on earth do you effectively monitor thousands of tourists every single day? And third, there's this huge double standard. Tourists are being charged while local shops right there at the sites are still selling everything in single-use plastic. It just doesn't add up.
You know, when a policy has this many obvious holes, you have to start asking, what's the real goal here? Because this doesn't feel like a simple mistake. It feels like a pattern. It's part of something you could call the green playbook.
And the key idea in that playbook is something called performative environmentalism. It's when the main goal isn't really to do good, but to look good. It's about choosing actions that are highly visible, things that look great on camera, instead of doing the hard, often invisible work of actually fixing the root of the problem.
And you can see this playbook in action all over Meghalaya. In one column, you have the visible, camera-friendly stuff, the deposit scheme, AI robots cleaning a lake, fancy marketing slogans. But in the other column, you have the invisible reality. 98% of waste going untreated, no real infrastructure, and plastic bans that nobody's actually enforcing. One side is for the tourism brochure, the other side is the truth.
What this leads to is basically governance by optics. It's all about managing how the problem looks, not solving the problem itself. The photo for the tourist brochure looks pristine, but just outside the frame, the real waste crisis is only getting worse. So if this isn't the real answer, then what is? What would it actually look like if we were serious about tackling this problem? And this is the real takeaway. A scheme like this is basically putting a small bandage on a massive wound. It cleverly shifts all the blame and responsibility onto the individual tourist while completely ignoring the two things that actually matter: where all this plastic is coming from in the first place and where all the waste ultimately goes. Which brings us to one final and kind of obvious question. If the real goal is to get plastic out of these beautiful natural areas, then why not just get it out at the source? Why not just ban the sale of plastic products near these sites and push for biodegradable alternatives instead?
It's a simple question, but the answer really tells you everything about the difference between just performing for the cameras and taking real, meaningful action.